The United States men's national team get ready to face Jamaica this week. And my goodness, do I have a great chat for you on Qué Golazo as Robbie Earle, former Jamaica International, of course, a dual national in England as well, former Wimbledon legend with the Crazy Gang. He's obviously also known in the U.S. as part of NBC's Premier League coverage. Robbie Earle joins me today to discuss this, his experiences, his resume, of course, his work with NBC, but most importantly, Jamaica and what they aim to do in CONCACAF as Qatar nears. Me and Robbie Earle on Qué Golazo begins right now. Hey, everybody. Joining us now on Qué Golazo CBS Sports is Robbie Earle. Robbie, welcome to the show. How are you?
Thank you, Louise. I'm very well. Thank you, my friend.
It's really great to have you. I wanted everybody to hear before we begin about your amazing resume, to be honest. Okay, here in the U.S., we're all familiar with Robbie's fantastic work with NBC Sports as part of their great Premier League crew. He's one half of two Robbie's podcasts with Robbie Mustoe as well. It's a tremendous pod, so make sure that you listen to this one and theirs as well. Okay. But Robbie's playing career comes with so many amazing achievements. A youth player at Stoke City, Robbie first entered the professional game with Port Vale, where he achieved cult hero status. I remember it. Then in the 90s, he was part of the Wimbledon's well-known Crazy Gang, alongside legendary players such as John Fashanu, Vinnie Jones, Efan Okoku, Marcus Gale, Jason Ewell. I mean, as someone who grew up in part of England in the 90s, I can tell you it was a memorable team. Robbie, English-born to Jamaican parents, also represented the Reggae Boyz and was part of their first and only appearance at the World Cup. It was the 1998 one. And he scored Jamaica's first ever goal at the World Cup finals and played in all three games in the tournament. And now, as Jamaica prepared to take on the United States in a friendly, but really more importantly, as the team gets ready to try and disrupt CONCACAF, I wanted to bring Robbie to the show to get his perspective. And let's not forget, too, that he's Robbie Earle, MBE, by the way, for his services to the game. Robbie, so I mean, I'm just so thankful. It's the first time we've met. I'm so happy you're here. First of all, how are you? How's life? How's this last year been for you?
Life's been not too bad. Obviously, amongst the pandemic, with so much going on, so many people having hardships, losing part of their families. It sometimes put football in perspective. And while we work in the industry and love the industry and love the games, we also realize that sometimes there's more important things in life. But what we have been able to do, and thankfully, and someone like yourself, is to be able to offer people some lighter moments, some entertainment, some distractions from what's going on. So we've took that responsibility seriously. We've tried to lighten moments when we can around games. We've made important statements about race, about gender equality, about homophobic issues while we're broadcasting. And it's been a challenging year, but I think it's been a satisfying year. Unfortunately, the Premier League has managed to continue.
Yeah, well, as you said, it's been tough, but we try and give entertainment as much as we can. Over here, we try and do that with Champions League, etc. And with you guys in NBC, the Premier League coverage is just tremendous. And I'm very thankful that you're part of it. And as you said, not just the fun things, but the important things, the black and minority issues, everything that's been going on. So for that, my friend, really, we all appreciate it. All right, listen. There's so much I want to talk to you about, including, of course, Jamaica. We'll get to that in a second. Very quickly, I just wanted to get your thoughts on the Premier League. We're in international break right now, but City are rolling. Chelsea doing well under Tuchel. Liverpool looking from the outside in. How has this season been for you in terms of performance? Anything major that sticks out to you?
I think, as we've said, it's been a very different year, an unusual year, crazy year with the pandemic, with players in bubbles, with players testing twice a week. And so I think what stands out this season, and we're seeing the fruit being born now of, I think you have to, this year was a unique year in terms of coaching. You had to look at your team and coach your team in a different way. And I think Pep Guardiola got it spot on. I think early in the season, he was rotating players, he was resting players, he was giving people 50, 60 minutes and almost having two teams playing in the Premier League in the early stages, while we had this compressed fixture list, while there was games on a Saturday and a Tuesday and a Wednesday and then a following Saturday. And I think now that it's borne out by Manchester City are flying. They've probably got the fittest squad at the moment. They've got no injuries at the moment. And that has put them in good stead. Everybody else is either lost 1 or 2 key players, Liverpool 4 or 5 key players, and it's caused them problems. So I think this year I've called it COVID coaching. I think Pep's been the best COVID coach. And that's the reason why City sit at the top of the table and look, all intents and purposes, to go on and win the title.
Yeah, well, see, Robbie, this is why I knew me and you were going to be friends, because my next question was going to be about City. I knew you were going to say City because me and you think exactly alike. I agree. I think Guardiola's done a tremendous job. Obviously, it doesn't hurt when you have a squad like that, but you still have to manage them. You still have to do that. What do you think, Robbie, just instinctively right now, what do you think of Man City's chances of the quadruple?
It's a challenge because one bad night, one bad day ends the quadruple. You have an off day in a final. You don't turn up in one of the quarterfinals of the Champions League, and you can get hurt, and it can be terminal. So, I mean, we're talking like the real high. This is, the rare air up there that we're talking about quadruples. Great teams struggle for quadruples. What is in their favour, and I think you're right, I think they could almost put 2 teams out in the Premier League and they'd both be in the top half of the table. I think that there's competition for places which is healthy at this stage of the season. So Raheem Sterling, who's been brilliant in the football club over the last 3 years, now all of a sudden is not guaranteed a place. Sergio Aguero, the great goal scorer, he's been in the Premier League era, is not guaranteed a place. When you've got that kind of competition with that quality of player, if it can be well managed, if you can have the luck, and if you can not have a bad night, not have one day when you don't turn up at the office, then it's doable, but it's still very rare air that we're talking about. Yeah.
So obviously, I think we can say that they are definitely favorites for the Premier League. Domestic competition that also maybe could be proven. I wonder, Robbie, or what you think about their chances in the Champions League. Obviously there's other teams. They have Borussia Dortmund coming up, but how likely do you see them? Because that's really Guardiola's biggest objective.
That's the one they've looked for. In quarterfinals, it has been the nemesis so far. They've got there so many times, it's not quite happened for them. Listen, this is a young Dortmund team with Earl and Haaland who's wants something to prove. This is a test. And then any team, when you get to this level of Champions League football, I know Porto were the team everybody maybe wanted. Real Madrid have got one night in them when they can hurt you. Chelsea Football Club under Tuchel are very well organised now. Don't give a lot away. If they start clicking up front, they can have a night. So there's no doubt that's the one that Pep wants. There's no doubt that there'll be a focus on that. But Manchester City, I know they sit as favourites at the moment to win the tournament, but Bayern Munich are still there and thereabouts, and that's never an easy night. And they've got to get through. First of all, let's get through the quarterfinals. Let's get to the semi-finals, and we can talk again.
Yeah, no, absolutely right. It's going to be very intriguing to see. All right, okay, let's switch gears for a second, Robbie. I mentioned your playing career. I remember those days because I grew up in the south of England. What a team, Wimbledon, huh? What was it like playing in that era with that team in the Premier League during those times?
Yeah. I mean, it was amazing. The more you look back and the more that you recognise and remember those times, the more it brings a smile to my face. I think the biggest compliment I can give of the group, of the era, of the time, and it was, the early days of the Premier League, which is a different Premier League than we see now. But the biggest compliment I can give of the group and the team and the feeling of the football club, that we have still a WhatsApp group called the Crazy Gang. And there's 20 to 25 players who are still on there. And every now and then something clicks or somebody says something about somebody, or if I've been on TV, the boys might give me a bit of stick or terrible tie, what you're doing. And I mean, it still continues. And I always explain it to people. The best way I can explain it is like most girls and guys will play a weekend in their team with their friends. It was like playing with 10 of your friends. It was just that it was going on in the Premier League. And, we'd go to Manchester United, we'd go to Arsenal, we'd go to Liverpool, we'd go to Chelsea. And we would not be inferior. We wouldn't feel as though they were better than us. We'd go and give them as good as we got. And not often we'd give them a bloody nose. And we kind of stood for something. I always felt we were the underdog. We were a lot of people's second team. We didn't quite have the money that the big teams had, and we didn't have the glamour that the big teams had, but we stood for something. And, there was a lot of people who got enjoyment out of what we did.
Yeah, absolutely right. First of all, that's amazing about your WhatsApp group. I'm wondering how. I'm sure Vinny is the loudest one in that group, isn't it?
There's a few. There's always a few. I mean, what happens? Vinny's very much front of house, but there's always a couple in the background who we say they load the bullets and let Jonesy fire them. So that's how we used to work it. But yeah, I mean, just great characters, good people, really, and we come together when we've had to. We've had, unfortunately, one of our teammates who passed away over the last 12 months. We all came together at that time and helped his family and made sure we were there for them. So yeah, through good and bad times, we're it's definitely a band of brothers, and we look out for each other.
Yeah, I really recommend, if you are a young football fan, soccer fan, please just, even if you can go on YouTube and just watch some clips. It was, I went to see you guys play a lot because my lifelong team, Aston Villa, obviously I couldn't go to Birmingham every single time. So I would come to see you, and my God, the games were amazing. They were so, because it really, when you watch that Wimbledon, also the fans just gave it that sort of, you said you didn't feel inferior to anybody. Fans were exactly the same. It was amazing.
Yeah, there wasn't sometimes as many of them as you see. When we played the big games, that if we played the Spurs or a Chelsea or Man United and they scored, half the ground would go up with the Man United fans, but the half of the Wimbledon fans would make their noise as well. And yeah, they were very proud of what we did and what we stood for as a team in an era. And sure, you'll remember then the Aston Villa at Sellers Park, Dalian Atkinson scoring a brilliant goal. And
one of the greatest goals. One of the greatest goals.
One of the greatest goals ever in the Premier League. And yeah, Dalian became a friend I got to know off the pitch. A lovely guy, such a sad loss. But he decided to pick that day to weave his way past 5 or 6 Wimbledon players and chip the goalkeeper. I've never, ever quite got over that one.
Yeah. Well, listen, after this pod, I might have to hear more so, because Dalian, aside from Dwight York, he's a personal Aston Villa hero of mine. It's unbelievable. Just fantastic. I mean, we could go on and on. But let's move on. Actually, let me ask you one last thing. Who was the best player, Robbie, that you played against? That's a really hard question.
So yeah, it's a hard question. I always say there was 2 really in terms of internationally. The best player I played against was Juan Sebastian Veron, playing for Argentina. I mean, he was an absolute legend and brilliant footballer. He came to England. It played at Manchester United and Chelsea. I don't think we saw the best of him in the Premier League. Maybe the intensity. There's times where when he played for Argentina, he was the man. When he asked for the ball, they gave it him. And I remember trying to, at one time, stop him. And I just felt like a kid against an adult. He could play with his left foot, with his right foot. He could play around me. He was quick. He was strong. He was intelligent. It was just like, wow, there's another level I couldn't get to. And then in the Premier League, very early on in my Premier League days, and my career started quite well, and I got a bit of recognition early when I started in the Premier League. I came up against a young Roy Keane, who at the time was playing for Nottingham Forest and Brian Clough. And I remember the day we played Forest and thinking, wow, after I came off, gee, that was a midfield powerhouse. I mean, I could run up and down and, I had a bit of box to box, but this guy was another level. And it kind of was very humbling and kind of gave me the incentive to train harder and get back in on the training ground and do a little bit extra work. So that was the young Roy Keane that went on to Manchester United, and we know what went on from there.
Yeah, he was the quintessential Brian Clough player.
Oh, yeah, he was a brilliant player.
Unbelievable. Just what 2 great examples. I met Juan Sebastian Veron a few years ago, and I was so scared. He was so nice. We had a great chat, but Veron is just like, wow, la brujita, we call him in Spanish. Unbelievable. Yeah, that's fantastic. Great examples. Robbie, all right, let's talk Jamaica for a second. How did it feel to play at that World Cup in '98?
I think the biggest thing I'd say, though, the word was pride. It was with great pride that, I'd been in a couple of England squads and around them. It hadn't quite worked for me. And through my parentage and my parents left the Caribbean to come to England, for children's education, etc., and a better life. So it kind of was proud to represent them. I almost felt it was a thank you to them for the sacrifices they'd gone. And obviously to be the first Caribbean nation to play there, to obviously score the goal was something that stays with you, and there's a great bit of history. So pride would be the real thing. It was a time when I always felt that we kind of helped put Jamaica on the map a little bit in terms of, back in the country, economy was up, crime was down, people were wanting, the tourist board were thriving, all because of football and all because the Reggae Boyz it brought a spotlight to Jamaica, and often Jamaica can be seen in the wrong light. So I thought it was a time when we actually put it in some good light, gave it a good platform, and people could see it for its beauty. Yeah, no, you mentioned a few very important things there. Obviously, born in England to Jamaican parents. I can relate a lot to this. My entire family is Peruvian, but I grew up in England, of course. So I have this dual identity as well. And you mentioned it. It was like a thank you to your parents. And I feel that that's a very important narrative that many people need to remember. You joined Jamaica at 32. And, I can only understand the complexities that come with representing and honoring the nations and cultures that create a human being. And we're seeing it a lot in CONCACAF. The United States men's national team, Mexico, Curacao, of course, Jamaica now is looking to recruit as well. Do you think, how difficult was that decision, by the way? Because you mentioned obviously that you represented England in different levels, but the moment that you made that call for Jamaica, how difficult was it? How intricate? Not difficult at all. I suppose the most difficult thing was working out the logistics of flying to Jamaica when we needed to be games. I had a Premier League career that was going. My club were a little bit concerned I was going to be away a lot. So I think working through the logistics was the kind of first point. But in terms of going to the football club, and I've been in a couple of England squads where I've been in training, and it's very structured and very professional and done a certain way. And then I remember going out to Jamaica, and we played in what was like a Caribbean Cup competition, inter-island competition. It was more like friendlies to have a look at players. And I always remember doing the game, and it was in Jamaica. We played a match, and after the game, we went back to the accommodation, the house that we stayed in, which was a house on its own on a nice piece of land. And we showered by all having the hose pipe, and I hosed the guy in front of me, and the guy behind hosed me, and it was like there was something so spiritual. There was something that drew us together. There was something that was like, this would never happen in England, but this is what's great about this opportunity and the adventure. And it kind of took me back, and it's really interesting because probably as we've got older, and we've seen in recent times things like the ancestry companies are coming out, and you find out a little bit more. I think people are more in tune. People want to know a bit more about where they come from, who are the people in the family, that family line. And for me, Jamaica was that, I got to understand and know and learn and have a better relationship with my father, to spending more time in Jamaica and understanding him as a person and the country that he grew up in. So I got as much as I was given playing for Jamaica. And in the end, it was a very sort of easy decision for me to make.
That's amazing. I love that. The housing each other. It's true. You just bring it back to the simplicity of the game. That's what makes it so amazing. All right. Well, Coach Tapper, right? Your former teammate.
Yeah.
He's the manager of Jamaica, getting ready for the USMNT this week as we're taping. But Robbie, there's much more to talk about in terms of the recruitment process and all the reports that we're hearing. Miguel Antonio from West Ham being talked about. Ivan Toney, who's just killing it with Brentford. What do you feel about that?
First of all, I just want to make, I think, an important point about Tapper, Theodore Whitmore, who I played with, is an outstanding individual footballer and had a good career over in England.
2 goals against Japan at the World Cup, right?
Yeah, and 2 goals. It's nice to see a Jamaican manager managing the team, and that we don't have to feel it always has to be a European or somebody from outside of the country who can do that. And Tapper's done a great job. He's helped develop the system underneath. The team's now competitive. And as you talk about, the next stage is looking at qualification of players through parentage and grandparents. And it's something that Jamaica should do, and other nations are. The US are a great example. The Republic of Ireland have built teams based on, making sure they've gone into their talent pool and wherever they can. And it could be exciting times when you think of the type of players like Miguel Antonio, Ravel Morrison, Ivan Toney just talked about, Liam Moore. There's a number of players who probably are not going to play international football for England. They're probably at the stage where they're thinking, you know, the international stage is great. It's a next level of performance. And they qualify through parents or grandparents to play for the nation. So it could be a really exciting time. And I know Tapper and a few people at the JFF are exploring those opportunities and making the right approaches. And I'm looking forward to it because it was the opportunity that I got to play international football and have the wonderful journey that was the World Cup. And with the quality of some of the players we're talking about, it definitely puts Jamaica in a better opportunity to qualify again.
Yeah, you make a really good point about Coach Tapper. A Jamaican managing Jamaica. I just feel it's so important. I mean, it makes a big symbol for everybody else, not just Jamaica, but even African nations, Caribbean nations, even smaller South American nations as well, I think.
And I think also young coaches, these young coaches in Jamaica who should be able to see Tapper in that position and have the ambition that one day they can lead the nation. It's not always going to be a German or a Brazilian or somebody from South America who's maybe got a bigger CV, but might not know the country, might not know the intricacies, the nuances of Jamaican football in the same way.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I wanted to quickly touch again on Miguel Antonio. Like, what a season West Ham are having. Huh? Amazing. I mean, giving away a point, I guess, against Arsenal, they probably could have done the business, but still something to be said about him and that team.
Oh, he's a one-man wrecking ball, Miguel Antonio, and that's not being disrespectful in terms of he's got good skills, he can hold the ball up, can play in a number of positions. The biggest thing I like about him is he looks to me like I'd love to have played with him because he looks one of those infectious players that he goes and gets you going and gets the next guy going and brings a vibe that's really important. And it's a West Ham team now that we're starting to see a consistency. We're starting to know what we're going to get with the likes of him and Bowen and Lingard, who are a different profile from what West Ham had before. West Ham were always like the technical touch guys, but who turn up some days and not others, and you never quite knew what you were going to get. With the Miguel Antonios of the world, you get a certain level of effort and performance every week, and then it seems now he goes, from 7 out of 10 to 8 out of 10 to 9 out of 10 sometimes. I mean, he basically put that team on his back during Project Restart at the end of last season with his goals and with his performances, and made sure they were in the Premier League. And he would be a huge coup for the Jamaican national team. And I think getting someone like Miguel might be the domino effect that you would need to attract one or two other players as well.
Yeah, he's the big magnet, and then everything else can happen. There was that moment against Arsenal. Yes, you mentioned about the wrecking ball and just the inspiration that he gives when he loses the ball to David Luiz. Yeah. And Luiz is just going down the half, and Antonio's like, "Oh hell no, I'm getting this back." He fouled him, but it was like amazing.
Yeah, it tells you a lot about the mindset of the man.
Yeah, he's a representation of lower league football and what it can do, I think, as well. But he's the big magnet. Listen, the thing is, though, Robbie, and we're nearly wrapping up here, everybody. If they do end up, getting this squad, because you mentioned there's already talented players in Jamaica. Coach Tapper's doing a good job. Of course. But they could really disrupt CONCACAF here.
When I remember back in the day, so we're going back to 98, and myself, Dion Burton, Paul Hall, Fitzroy Simpson with the first foot come in, and then Marcus Gale, Frank Sinclair joined us as well. And we instantly knew when we went to places like the US, Mexico, Canada, some of the bigger teams in the region at the time, there was a different feel to us. There was a different way they looked at us, because all of a sudden they took it a little bit more serious. Now, rightly or wrongly, the amalgamation of Jamaican football that has some highly skilled, high-speed, physical players with some of the technical things that we'd learned, maybe systems, maybe a little bit of professionalism and discipline. When you mix those two together, it can be a really powerful thing to go. And when we played in games, you just sensed that there was a different look, a different feel. People were viewing us through a different eye because of those players that came in. And the players we've listed with Miguel Antonio at the top of the list, that would bring a different fear to some of those teams. And that's a good thing, because it brings parity, it brings the opportunity for different faces to be seen on the World Cup stage. And Jamaica, I say it's been 23 years since we were last there. Could desperately, make in the next few years, I'd like to see them going back.
Well, I mean, I completely concur. It will be amazing for them to disrupt CONCACAF and finally return to the World Cup finals. The last thing, Robbie, you're not on Twitter. It's a wise move. Any particular reason?
I do. We do that handle through the two Robbies, which is my football persona and that. But I try and sometimes separate the two and feel that one world is Robbie Earle, you know, the presenter, ex-footballer, and another world's Robbie Earle, the person who can have a life outside. So I try and keep the juxtaposition of those two.
No, well played. What one half is the Robbie Earle on WhatsApp with the crazy
yeah. Those are the things I don't want going on Twitter. I think in America now I'd be locked up. I'd be calling you for bail, like, you know, the crazy gang are in town.
Well, we were saying, Robbie, before taping that if the crazy gang played now in the night,
oh man,
8 red cards in every game, I think.
Oh man, but enjoy us. Do you know what I mean? We were something different. We were the disruptors of the Premier League back in the day. And I'll tell you a very quick story that one time we beat Manchester United in I think it was quarterfinals of the FA Cup. And Sir Alex Ferguson came into our dressing room and said, you know, well done, you deserve it tonight. I said, sometimes, you know, my team need a little bit of what you've got. So even the greatest, even the very best managers appreciated sometimes what we did and what we stood for and what we were about. We didn't have the greatest players in the world, but you know what? We gave every inch of everything that we got each game.
That's amazing. And I think that's a message for any young fan or young player to just see like that kind of determination. Either way, though, you'd probably get like 9 red cards in every game. But still.
We always think we'd be top of one league. That's the red card and yellow card count.
And you know what? Vinnie Jones's biggest enemy would be VAR because they'll just look back.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, man. Well, Robbie Earle, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for joining the show.
My pleasure. Let's do it again sometime. Maybe end the season.
Absolutely. Hey, everybody. I want to thank Robbie Earle for joining me today. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter, Qué Golazo Pod. Follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, YouTube, cbsports.com, and anywhere else that you listen to your pods. You can also watch us on YouTube, as mentioned before. Have a great, great rest of your week.